Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
I'm Egbert, the owner of this station. Check out my website at egbert.com. That's E-G-G-B-U-R-T, egbert.com. Now it's back to Brad and John. Check out their website at bjshow.co. The BJ Show? Come on, guys. Anyway, here's B and J.
The more I interact with John on a daily basis, both on the radio here and occasionally off the radio, the more I'm impressed with John Combest.
Oh, Brad. Now, first of all, let me register and acknowledge that compliment. Thank you. What is the origin of this? Go on. Go on. Don't flatter me, Brad.
John is Mr. Twitter, okay? And what John does...
It's called X now, Brad. Come on.
Are you tired? And you get me sidetracked. Aren't you tired of the articles where they say, an X, formerly known as Twitter? I go, okay, give it a break.
It's like we all get it. We all get it.
Right. Okay, so John... We chop up the show. I chop up the show, and I put it up as a podcast, also as a YouTube video. And then John sends out his Twitter, his X post of dissecting the show and stuff like that. Okay, and he does an excellent job of essentially tagging people that we talk about. Okay, yep. So yesterday, we were talking about the fact that I have a RSVP to a certain event that's happening tonight, which we said we wouldn't talk about.
Which we shall not talk about.
Which we shall not talk about.
Let's just say Brad loves the D.
Right.
We all know Brad loves the D.
Right. But I also love the B. I love D and B. But okay. So anyway, you started talking about Annie Frey. And what's interesting, Annie Frey is the midday host on 97.1. She's on there from noon to 3. And quite honestly, I have been a big fan of Annie Frey because there are a number of different things about it. First off, she's an East Side girl. I think she grew up in Edwardsville or somewhere. I think that's where she lives still.
No, that's like the only downside of her. You're right.
No. I don't think there is a downside to her. Okay, she worked her way up in the radio business. She started originally she was on a sports station. I think she was on KFNS and stuff like that. Then she got a job with the old Emmis, which was Intercom, which is now Odyssey. It gets complicated. And she essentially was their social media person. She did most of the websites. And from time to time, I believe they have her on the Dave Glover show. Well, apparently she wanted to show off her conservative chops, so they gave her a 1-hour show on Saturday afternoon, late Saturday. I think it was like when it ran from 5 to 6 or something like it. It might have been 2 hours, but I remember I heard the very first time she was on the air, and I thought to myself, wow, she's pretty good. Well, through the years, she got promoted, and now she's the noon to 3 and has gotten some national awards, gotten the Gracie Award. I think she's gotten the Gracie Award twice. You know what the Gracie Award is?
Yeah, it's a jiu-jitsu thing, the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. No. They have a bunch of schools. There's even one out in Weldon Spring, I believe, Brad. I think Bill Eigel goes there.
No, that's not
Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. Look it up.
No,
also look up Gracie Train. Go ahead.
That's not it. The Gracie Award is an award, national award given by a Women's Broadcasters Association. Can't remember which one, but she's won it twice, and they actually fly her up to New York City in big ceremony and the whole bit. Okay, so anyway, we talk about this yesterday on the air, and the big D, the big D at the D&B tonight, which we're not going to talk about. And John talks about how they have a really unique YouTube channel, what they do on YouTube. Very complimentary, okay? And I mentioned something about the fact that, well, I don't, and we actually had Shelley on the air where I told her years ago, one of my rules in the radio business, you never crash a competitor's event. You don't show up at their remote broadcast and say, hey, you should be listening to my station instead of this crappy station. So yesterday in the evening, I get a direct message from, guess who? Annie Frey. And
oh, nice. That's very kind of her.
And I sent, where was it? Here, let me see if I can find it. I think it's gone now. Here it is. Okay. She sent was 4:15 yesterday afternoon. She says, "See you at the party."
That's nice.
And
well,
then,
good. Now, we're not going to talk about it, but are you really going to skip queer rights tonight at the Missouri History Museum and go somewhere else?
I am. Okay, let me just.
Oh, wow.
Let me.
You can talk. You can tell us about it later. Wherever you happen to go, if you see anybody I like, tell them I said hi. If you see anybody I don't like, just turn your nose up and pretend you don't see them.
Let me just finish what this conversation was. She sends me a DM on X, see you at the party, and I say back, "Is that okay with you?" And she says, "Ha ha, I have no say in who comes. Why wouldn't it be?" And then she also sends, "I don't get into radio drama, so if there is some, I'm unaware. I work with many, many people in the industry in my 18 years, and my dad was in STL radio since the 70s. I keep my head down, try to do my best work, and hope someone notices."
That's great.
Once again, I'm thinking to myself, okay, she's got the right attitude. I've said it all along. This crap that goes on in our industry, where I can mention the Tracy Ellises, the Steve Caspers, the Brian Richardsons of the world. All they want to do is cut down the competition. Oh, our radio station's great, and their radio station sucks. And I have constantly said, how many times have you heard me say, as the tide rises, so do all boats? And
absolutely.
The idea being, instead of us as radio people, and how many times have I heard this? I mean, every once in a while, I still get a call from a friend of mine who will be approached by a radio salesperson from another station. They'll mention, well, I'm on with Reds. And they'll go, well, his stations really aren't that good of a station. He doesn't have much coverage. And he sucks, and he's a terrible person. I don't even know why they let him out of jail. And, that kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, once again, let's take that to a different area. Let's say your air conditioner goes out and you bring in XYZ air conditioner repair, and the guy comes in and you tell him up front, well, you're my second opinion. Okay, who is your first opinion? Well, it's ABC. Well, they suck. They're when they put an R22 in your system, it's really not R22, it's R36, which is a knockoff they got from China, and their guys are all homosexual perverts that, hang out at the public library. I go, oh, hold on a minute. I just want you to fix my air conditioner, but maybe I don't want you to fix my air conditioner anymore. See you bye. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, I get exactly what you're saying.
It's like, I mean, I have taught, and if I were to call Shelley up, I have taught her and my other people that work for me. If someone says, well, I'm on so-and-so radio station, we're trying to sell somebody. We're on so-and-so radio station. We're on Tracy's radio station. Our response is always, you know what? They're a really good station. Let me tell you the pluses to that station, but let me tell you why we might think that you might do better off with us, because of the fact that, and I can give you the example of Westplex 107.1. If, for example, the thing that still frustrates me is in the election cycle we're in right now. Okay, what do all the politicians still say that's important for them to win? The suburban women, right? Okay?
Yeah, a lot of them say that. You're right.
How much more suburban women can you get from the women who listen to my station, Westplex 107.1, who live in St. Charles County, okay? Is that not the epitome of suburban women? But
it is, yeah.
But yet, when I go pitch this to advertisers, political advertisers, you know what they go? They say, well, you don't have any men. Well, who cares? Don't you want suburban women? Well, yeah, but you got to understand, the suburban men tell the suburban women how to vote. So we don't want to be on your station because...
Now, in fairness, Brent, not to... I start to say not to interrupt, but to interrupt, have you heard that at all this cycle? So in this, like, say, in the last couple months, have you pitched any political candidates and heard that feedback in the last, say, 2 months?
Last week.
Wow, really? Somebody told you that?
Oh, yeah. Well, but it's like I told you, the goofy thing for me is that I still don't understand about, I told you, and look, I'm not, Dave Zucker, who was the former mayor of Dardenne Prairie, he let me do, they have this thing, the Republican Central Committee in St. Charles County has this thing, I guess they do it every year, and I was one of the presenters. They call it Candidate School, and I was one of the presenters, and I was the last guy on the thing. And all morning I sat there, and once again, a lot of it was good information, but if you sat through all the different sessions, all the different presenters, and you listen to what they said, essentially, if you were bullet pointing it, number one would be yard signs, number two would be door knocking. Now, once again, matter of fact, I had this discussion with somebody yesterday about the fact that, matter of fact, I won't say who this was, but there was a person that works for a local group that is trying to recruit voters. And she was talking about how they have an outreach to high school students. And I say, you know what the problem with that is? The problem with that is that they don't vote. And she says, well, their whole thing, they're getting them registered to vote. And I told her, I said, look, this is anecdotal evidence, but I've been involved with this, and I told her the whole same story about how I was this candidate school, and that was brought up. What about the young people? And because one of the questions was, well, how come you're not really talking much about social media and internet and stuff like that? And the expert says, I can't remember the number, he says, the percentage of under 30 voters is minuscule. So in other words, when they can register all they want, these voters, and you know as well as I do, John, being a political animal, that if you were to essentially figure out who votes in elections, and it depends if it's a general or it's a primary and stuff like that. There's some differences, and also with municipals and stuff like that. But by far, the majority of the voters are 40 plus. Would you agree with me on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I mean, the data backs that up. That's not an opinion. That's a fact.
Right. And in some areas, the majority of the voters are 50 plus, and in some areas, the majority of the voters are 60 plus. So one of the presenters even said, you don't need a website, you don't need that social media, because of the fact that that's going after the young voters. And I go, God, how sad is this? Yeah. I mean, and to the point where, to me, it's just like and going back to the competition with radio, I explain to clients, I go, each radio station is like a different flavor. It's sort of like fast food. You go to Taco Bell, you get one thing. There's a radio stations like Taco Bell and stuff like that. But what happens is, does everybody eat at Taco Bell all the time? No, they don't. Some people do, but most don't. Okay? So what you do is, and especially nowadays in the media landscape we're in right now, you have to cover all the bases. You have to do, believe it or not, you still have to do television, which obviously, the Bill Eigel thing. By the way, I saw that out yesterday. It's pretty funny, the Get Bent ad. You have to do the TV stuff. You should do the TV stuff. You should do radio. A lot of people don't. Billboards, still very, once again, you see them. Yard signs, social media, that kind of stuff. You have to cover the landscape. Matter of fact, there's this crazy thing that right now, if you really get into this nerdville like I do, there's all this crazy things called, there's what they call OTT, there's OTA, there's OOH, and you throw these out to people who are not involved in this every day. People go, okay, what's OTT? Over the top. What is over the top? You know what over the top is, John?
Yeah, it's conventional radio, right?
No, OTT is what they call set-top boxes. OTT is like Hulu and things like that, okay?
Okay.
OOH is out of home. Out of home could be billboards. In some markets, we don't have it here in St. Louis, but I don't know if you know this or not. In some markets, Uber has this thing where they have their Uber drivers who strap an electronic display onto the roof of their car where they run ads. This is in some of the markets that Uber's in, okay? OOH could be essentially yard signs, billboard, stuff like that. OTA is over the air. Then you have CTV, which is connected TV. And you start talking, people go, oh, you mean I just can't buy a newspaper ad? Well, back in the day you could, and once again, there's still people that read the Post-Dispatch. And like me, one of my all-time favorite things, and you're going to laugh when I tell you this, one of my all-time favorite things, and it gets increasingly hard for me to do because you can't find this anymore. One of my favorite all-time things was to go somewhere, pick up the Wall Street Journal. I used to go into Clayton from time to time, pick up the Wall Street Journal, a hard copy, printed edition of a Wall Street Journal, go to a restaurant, sit there and eat by myself and read the Wall Street Journal. Don't ask me why. Ever since I've been in my 20s, it's always been, I can tell you that many a day I've had lunch by myself reading the Wall Street Journal. Now you can't find a print copy anymore. Every once in a while, I still see some of them at Schnucks. Infrequently. I don't know if you shop at Schnucks from time to time. Do you ever go to Schnucks? Did I lose you, John?
No, I'm here. Sorry, I had gone on mute for a second.
Okay.
Yeah, and I had the same experience, Brett. Not to interrupt you, but I had the same experience because I used to purchase Investor's Business Daily before I subscribed. I used to get it at Schnucks, and half the time, half of the Schnucks would have it, half of them wouldn't. And I was actually surprised that many of them still carry IBD. But go ahead, I get what you're saying.
Well, You just can't say that everybody does this, and once again, everybody's so divergent. I mean, like, for example, you can take a neighborhood, and in my old neighborhood, you can say, well, this is the people in this subdivision, this is what they all think. No, they don't. The guy next to me is a nutbag. The guy across the street from me, I think, is selling drugs. The lady up the street, I think she's got a side business, where she's doing, porn on the internet. She's on OnlyFans. Once again, we all live, side by side, but we're all different. And I I don't understand why, and this is the thing you get into, especially in radio time. Everybody wants to be on the political stations, but the problem there is, and this is the point I make all the time, 97.1, nothing against 97.1, our Tracy station, or the refugees at 104, whatever they are, I don't know what it is, 104.9.
Whatever, who cares?
Okay.
Yeah.
The majority of radio listeners to talk radio is anywhere between 80 to 95% men. That's not me saying that. That is a dyed-in-the-wool fact of life in the radio business. And some stations, like if you go, even farther, you go to like ESPN 101 Sports, it's like 98% men, okay? If you're trying to reach suburban women, why are you on these talk stations? You should be on KZK, Y98, stations like that. Z1077, that's where you should be.
Let me ask you, Brad, because we're up against break here too. This has been quite an educational session on the history of the past and the present of the radio industry. Is there a particular call to action that you would recommend that political staff candidates and consultants take?
Well, they should send me an RFP. And, an RFP is request for proposal. And we have a specific form. And the form we're using this month is a $100 bill. Write what you want on our radio station on the back of that $100 bill and mail it to me, and we'll see what happens.
And if folks go to westplex1071.com, where could they find information about reaching that critical female audience, Brad?
The easiest way for me is, here's my phone number. I get about all the time, 314-280-8880, 314-280-8880. The easiest way for me to work is I have a very sophisticated computer program we use, and I say to clients, what's your budget? How long do you want to run for? And then what I do is I plug this into our computer system, and it prints out a very detailed schedule. Because once again, some of my radio brethren, we contend with this all the time, where there's one particular station that that the clients will tell me, well, I'm on their station 6 times a day. And my next question is, what time are you on? And they don't know, because they don't ask, because they may be on 6 times a day. They may be on 2 times between 6A and 6P, but they may be on 4 times between 6P and 6A, which is a huge difference, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a good piece of information, and folks can contact you directly if they have questions about that.
Right, but don't ask me about the D at DMB tonight, okay? I won't answer any of those questions.
Absolutely not.
Okay, time for us. And I've got some other stuff to talk about, John.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?